My Hometown, The Cursed Land. Episode 1, The Dog with the Hat and the Cane. A true story from Bắc Biên Village, Long Biên District, Hanoi, a place where a series of unexplainable events have haunted one family for decades. In 2001, 3 members of the same household witnessed something so bizarre, so completely impossible, that even today, they still struggle to make sense of it. They saw an old dog standing upright, wearing a Vietnamese conical hat, leaning on a cane, slowly walking out the front gate, like an old man who had just come back from the dead. But to understand what really happened that day, we have to go back 15 years earlier. In 1986, the narrator's grandmother, whom we'll call Grandma B, brought home 2 puppies. She named them Tin and Mike. That same year, her first granddaughter, Lynn, was born. Grandma smiled and said, "Well, looks like we've got 3 babies this year. Let them grow up together." And they did. Tin was the kind of dog people talk about. Sweet, intelligent, almost like a child. Once Lynn's uncle told Tin to fetch a basket from the kitchen. Tin got up, walked inside, and dragged the basket out. Mick was different, distant, quiet. He didn't bark much, just growled low in his throat. But strangely, when Mick was in the yard, no dogs or cats from the neighborhood dared to come near. People said, "Mike has a presence." Inside the house, everyone respected Mick, and maybe feared him a little. Then came the flood season of 2001, and that's when everything changed. One evening, Tin didn't come home for dinner. The next morning, Uncle D found his body by the bamboo grove near the riverbank. Cold, still. They buried him under a banana tree at the edge of the garden. Grandma B didn't speak all morning. She just sat by the door, clutching her prayer beads, staring out into the yard. Later that day, just past noon, the sun was blazing hot. Grandma brought lunch outside to dry, and then she heard something. Thud, thud, thud. A wooden cane, striking the ground, one step at a time. Thinking a visitor had arrived, she rushed back in to grab her conical hat. But when she came out, she froze. Standing by the tree was Mick, walking on his hind legs, wearing her conical hat, holding a cane between his front paws. His red tongue hung out, his eyes wide open, unblinking. Step by step, Mick moved across the yard, heading straight for the front gate. D, come help me, Grandma shouted. Uncle D and his wife rushed from the back of the house. But the moment they saw what Grandma saw, they stopped in their tracks. Mick kept walking. No barking, no hesitation, just the steady thud of the cane. As he neared the gate, Uncle D suddenly bolted toward him. But when he got there, Mick was gone. No sound, no trace. In Vietnamese folklore, it's said that if an animal lives too long, it can develop a kind of supernatural awareness, drawing in dark energy, seizing human life force, and eventually becoming a tin, much like the fox spirits of other Asian legends. Some of these creatures even learn to pass themselves off as human, walking on 2 legs, lying in hammocks, and wearing a conical hat to shield their eyes from moonlight, so the celestial guardians can't see them. The so-called cane-wielding dog is the ringleader, commanding an eerie pack that includes ghostly cats, ominous owls, flesh-eating ducks, and roosters that crow at midnight, all said to prey on human souls. And if someone gasps in terror at the sight of it, their soul is taken on the spot. According to some accounts, encountering a ragged hat dog is an omen that the land itself is cursed and steeped in malevolent energies, or a warning that an elderly family member may be close to passing away. That night, it poured. Grandma's house sat just feet from the riverbank. No concrete embankment back then. The floodwaters crept high enough that you could hear waves slapping against the wooden stilts beneath the house. And in the morning, Uncle D went out to check the grave. It had been completely dug up. Tin's body was gone, and all around it. Dozens, maybe hundreds of muddy paw prints, big ones, small ones, all over the place. The family told their story. No one believed them. Neighbors said they were hallucinating, sleepwalking, making it up. But to this day, Grandma B still says, those two never left. They're still here in the yard. We just can't see them anymore. This story is real. Everyone in Bắc Biên remembers it, and it's just the beginning. Follow this channel to discover more about Grandma B, a woman who spent her entire life in this strange land and lived through horrors far worse than this. This was episode 1 of the series, Strange Tales of the East. And Bắc Biên, it was never just an ordinary place. My hometown is haunted. Part 2, the Guardian General. This land only gave birth to daughters until they dug up this. My family owns an ancestral plot of land in the Vietnamese countryside, and for generations something strange kept happening. Everyone who lived on that land only gave birth to girls, every single time. But the real horror began on a rainy night in 1968, when a headless general on horseback rode straight into my family's home, and something buried beneath the ground was finally uncovered. The land of daughters. After my grandfather passed away, the land was divided among his children. Each person built their home on a piece of it, and soon the pattern became undeniable. My uncle, 2 daughters. My aunt, 1 daughter. The neighbors next door, all daughters. Only the women who moved to the city, like my mom and Aunt T, had sons. Villagers began whispering, that land is heavy with yin energy, and girls carry the yin. It sounded like superstition. Until one day I found an old tombstone hidden in the bushes behind the house, with inscriptions carved in ancient Chinese characters. Confused, I asked my mom, and that's when my grandmother revealed what happened when she was just 12 years old. The rain and the horse's hooves. My grandfather used to work night shifts at a pen factory in Hanoi, often returning home at 1 or 2 a.m. That night it was drizzling. My grandmother and my young mother were lying on the bed, talking, waiting for him, and suddenly they heard something moving outside in the garden. Thud, thud, like the sound of a horse's hooves. Grandma got up to light a candle, but bang! The wooden latch on the door dropped by itself. Both doors flew open. Cold wind blasted through the house. The sound of hooves grew louder. And then, a man on horseback burst into the room. Except he had no head. He wore a military uniform, held a sword. Rain sprayed from the horse's hooves. My mother screamed. And just then, the front gate creaked open. My grandfather had returned. The headless rider turned his horse and galloped straight into the river and vanished. The chase no one ever understood. When Grandpa heard what happened, he said nothing. His face went pale, then red with anger. He rolled up his pants, grabbed a machete and one of his slippers, and ran out into the storm. Grandma begged him to stop, but he disappeared into the night. He didn't return until morning, soaked and holding only one slipper. He never told anyone what he saw. He never spoke of that night again, not even once. And then he passed away. What they dug up. The next day, my grandmother brought in both a local medium and a monk. They walked quietly through the property until they stopped by a cluster of bamboo trees near the river. The medium pointed to the ground and said, "Dig 1.5 meters down." We did, and that's when we found a horse's skeleton and a headless corpse in battle armor. From that day on, my grandmother built a small shrine. She called him the Guardian General. We lit incense every year, and strangely, whenever something terrible was about to happen to our family. Somehow it was always avoided. We never found out who the general was. We never understood why he chose to appear at our house. But whenever bad luck crept close to our family, Grandma would quietly light incense and whisper, "He's returned." My grandmother was a living legend, strange, spiritual, and full of untold stories. And this haunted land holds many more secrets, which I'll reveal in the next episode. Stay tuned for part 3.
Follow me. I'm not crazy anymore.
My hometown, the cursed land. Part 3, my grandmother, the strange woman. A woman lost her mind for no apparent reason. No cure worked. Then 2 months later, she suddenly came back, walking through dozens of military checkpoints during wartime curfew in the middle of the night, returning home as if nothing had ever happened. Except for one thing. Her long black hair had turned completely white overnight. No one ever figured out what happened, but from that night on, she was never the same again. I come from a small rural village in northern Vietnam, where everyone used to talk about one woman, my grandmother. Back in her youth, she was called the most beautiful girl in the village. She was born into a wealthy family. Her father worked for the old government as a record officer, and they once owned vast plots of land. But then, everything started to fall apart. It was as if a curse had been cast on our bloodline. It all began with my great-grandfather, my grandmother's father. His life was full of strange turns. He fathered nearly a dozen children, all girls. Then he lost everything: land, property, legacy, and eventually even his bloodline. People in the village started whispering, "That land is cursed." But that wasn't the scariest part. Let's go back to my grandmother, the one who went mad. She married young and gave birth to my mother before she was even 16. Then one night, when my mother was 14, everything changed. After a terrifying incident involving a headless general on horseback, which I talked about in part 2, my grandmother lost her mind completely. She stopped recognizing anyone. She wouldn't speak. She wouldn't eat. She either laughed maniacally or sat in silence. The family, helpless, took her to the Trao Quy Psychiatric Hospital in Hanoi, a place for those who had lost all touch with reality. 2 months passed. Then one windless, moonless night, my mother was sleeping when she heard a knock at the gate. Faint but steady, like a metronome ticking in the dark. She opened the gate, and there stood my grandmother, hair white as snow, clothes in tatters, barefoot, eyes clear, but hollow.
I'm not crazy anymore.
Cold, emotionless. The voice didn't sound human, like it had come from somewhere else. Everyone was stunned. How did she manage to walk all the way from Trao Quy to Long Bien on foot, through dozens of heavily guarded military checkpoints during the height of the Vietnam War? A while later, my grandfather came home, and the moment he saw my grandmother, he was genuinely terrified. Not because of her now snow-white hair, but because of something else. Something you'll understand clearly in part 6 of the story. Then she told us, her voice now normal again. That night in the asylum, she was lying down when a person dressed in white walked into the room and asked, "Are you N? Do you want to return to your husband and children?" She said yes. The person never revealed their face, just gave instructions. When I say crawl, crawl. When I say run, run. Don't ask questions. And she obeyed, like in a trance. The road was long. The night was dark. No one stopped her. No one even noticed. It was as if she wasn't human anymore. And when she woke up, my mother was standing right in front of her. From that moment on, she was cured. No more madness. But strange things began to happen. She never told anyone who that person was. No one ever figured out what truly happened on that walk through the night. They only knew one thing: her hair remained white forever. It never turned black again. As for the family tragedy that began with my great-grandfather, the man who lost everything and left behind a bloodline that faded into silence, That's a story for the next part. Click subscribe to follow the story. My hometown, the cursed land. Part 4, the family curse that erased every son. Have you ever heard of a piece of land cursed to never allow a son to survive? A wealthy, kind-hearted family. No enemies, no political entanglements. And yet, over the course of 3 generations, not a single male heir lived long enough to carry on the bloodline. And the last person who could have broken the curse? He drowned in a puddle of water that barely reached his waist. My great-grandfather was a remarkable man. He worked in land registry, handling property records, and became one of the wealthiest men in the region. People respected him. He was gentle, stayed away from politics and power, and never hurt anyone. He had 5 wives. That might sound excessive now, but for a man of status back then, it wasn't unusual. But here's where it gets strange. Every single one of them only gave birth to daughters. My grandmother, the youngest daughter of the 3rd wife, was one of them. Only one wife, his second, who lived in Hanoi, gave birth to a boy, Uncle T, the sole male heir of the entire family. The whole clan placed their hopes on him. He was gifted, passed the national equivalent of college exams at just 16. To my great-grandfather, Uncle T was the future, the one who would carry the family name. Uncle T didn't gamble or drink. He had only one hobby, fishing. Every weekend, he would leave Hanoi and return to the family's riverside retreat in Gok Tui, a peaceful home built by his father to escape the chaos of city life. But that very place would be where he died. That day, he went fishing with a friend. They set up near a chuang, a shallow river pool close to the riverbank. The water barely reached waist level, nothing dangerous. As they fished, his line got stuck. Uncle T said, "Hold on, I'll go in and untangle it." He stepped into the water and never came back up. The friend? He didn't scream, didn't run for help. He silently packed up the fishing gear and walked home, went to bed. Later that night, when my great-grandfather realized his son hadn't returned, he panicked and went looking. The friend casually said, "Oh, he drowned." My great-grandfather ran to the river like a madman. The pool was barely waist deep. Dozens of villagers searched all night, but the body was never found. How could a strong swimmer drown in shallow water and leave no trace? Time passed. The tragedy faded. Then, unexpectedly, his 3rd wife, my grandmother's mother, became pregnant. A spark of hope returned to the family. If this child was a boy, maybe the curse would be broken. She blossomed during her pregnancy. By the 7th month, she looked healthy, glowing. My great-grandfather adored her. But then, in that very 7th month, she fell severely ill. Doctors tried everything. Nothing worked. When she passed away, the doctor whispered to my great-grandfather, "It was a boy, but we couldn't save him." My great-grandfather collapsed in the courtyard, sobbing like a child. By the end of his life, no male heir had survived. The family spirit faded, and the fortune, the lands, the legacy, slowly unraveled. After that, no one in the family dared to hope again. Even in my grandfather's generation, the land's curse continued. He had 2 sons, Uncle D and Uncle C, but what happened around them was even more bizarre. And my grandfather, because of one act of kindness, accidentally offended a strange beggar. What followed were countless bizarre and terrifying events that plagued my family for years. Subscribe for the next episode, The Mysterious Eerie Beggar,